Just an aside before this video starts, I was supposed to upload this sooner, but I couldn't get to edit it because this fucking heat wave on the UK melted everything I ever loved and known, including my brain a bit, so sorry for the delay. Hello there. As many of you know by now, there are many ways to play FruityDaLei Funkin. Yes, we're doing another episode. Anyways, the game has been out for some time now, so it's likely people are going to mod it in some form or another. With time, it has spiraled to the point that there are so many mods, which is down to the fact that it's easy to put your own character in, if able, your own music when efforts are combined. That being said, I wanted to bring together my thoughts and present what I think is the best, but then the worst mod also, with my reasoning behind it too. Before I start going through them all, I want to mention the fact that I set up a couple rules to make the listing fair and isn't just completely random, so it's common knowledge amongst many other fans as well. That being said, the mod must appear on the character listing on the mod wiki, has to be fully completed, so it can't just be one in development, but those that are awaiting additional content that is integral to the mod itself, making sense, can be included too. Finally, there should be zero mention of Sonic or the many mods that stemmed from .exe's popularity, since there is just so much to cover, and ultimately, since Sonic.exe is perma-stuck in the 2.5 build, it would be unfair to hold it above those which are actually finished. Of course, this listing will be opinionated in one way or another, since one thing can appeal to one person over the other, in which I may not be able to dictate. I'm happy to hear your ideas though, if you have any. Last thing, I want to include a couple of honourable and dishonourable mentions for the list, since it was such a hard task getting it all down to just one mod for each, so I'll do a quick analysis for you all now. The original mods to ever come about from the FNF modding scene have certainly earned their spot on my list due to them setting a decent standard to follow, that being of Witty and Tricky, of whom both got updates to round things off to make everything feel complete. Witty's week created the blueprints for what an original character should be like within their own mod, with mystery in the air and the memorable voice to go with the music. Same with Tricky, though they took the extra steps to remain faithful to the source material that he comes from. The more creepy and horror aspect, Lullaby certainly brought around a more unique experience, as at the time, mods weren't really that scary, but with the grotesque nature of both Hypno and Gold, it was certainly something new amongst the sea of OCs or recreations of characters from older media. It is a shame to see things getting leaked from the newest build that was supposed to come out on Halloween if they were to keep to tradition. Finally, we have Retaken Sanity, a large expansion to the original Starving Artist mod, which more or less revives Rebecca and supplies a more happy ending, where previously there was only misery and despair. Besides, I like Ben, he's blue too, and pale. Wait a minute. Those of which getting kicked into the Dishonourable section will probably come down to a couple of the same cases, no doubt. First of all, we have the Damon Bambi cast, which kinda sit in the same boat as Sonic.exe with the numerous characters, but a much worse degree. I don't know if it's because I would never experience the old polygraphic 3D model sort of thing that they use throughout the mod, but it all looks appealing, with the characters sounding awful to boot. When making a mod, it should consider replayability, since you'll be doing that often if you aren't too good at the game. But what better way to ruin that than by having irritating vocals and poor music? Introducing Bob's Onslaught, that off the bat was created to make fun of the other mods that came out with edgy third forms for transformations or note spam or whatever else, but it loses that charm after the first couple of attempts. Finally, for this section, I will direct attention onto the plethora of Suicide Mouse mods that have been shoveled out to try and beat out the previous attempts. That will leave me unsatisfied when they can't competently make an interesting week. To begin with, Doki Doki Takeover was merely just a mod for Monica, in which would overlap Senpai's week, but with time, things would start to develop until the entire thing was released to the public, featuring all of the literature club members now. What made it stand out from the get-go was the link it was able to make from DDLC to Hating Simulator, and then how all the characters interacted from there, specifically Monika and Senpai, since that was how the mod began. When progressing, we get the introduction of everyone as they get their own chance to speak and set themselves up, both boyfriend but also the player if they weren't aware of Doki Doki Literature Club to begin with. Not to mention, they all gain an additional song that has been remixed to fit their style when the festival week rolls around. Most of this being possible thanks to the numerous composers, voice actors and other established help when it came to making the mod itself. Shifting gazes to the artwork though, it is clear they know what they were doing when it comes down to expressing the character through actions of words as they move in such a way that mirrors their personality. Sayori is cheerful, he has moments of being subdued. Natsuki is overtly annoyed by boyfriend, but shows her pride in other moves too, and Yuri is shy, which is why she barely moves, but when corrupted begins to shift more chaotically. There are even differences between the Pixel and normal Monika. She is a bit less animated when only being condemned to such an older gaming system. This whole paragraph could be explained through the character's icons on the health bar though, since they function well enough to be dissimilar from one another and allow for fun minus concepts too. With everything being well put together, there really isn't a need for some sort of gimmick besides the normal ones like draining health or missing notes, since it would take away from the scene itself in some cases. We see an example of this as Markov symbols are used in which need avoiding unless you get an instant loss, which depending on the stage could activate a hidden feature of Monika giving the player a jump scare. Similar to that from DDLC, if the player is recording with something like OBS. I suppose with that out of the way. Recently, a successor to the original mod was released under the name Doki Doki Takeover Bad Ending, and plays off the idea that after boyfriend and girlfriend get teleported to DDLC, Monika is unable to follow, which results in everything going to hell. Since she isn't there to manage everything, the remaining club members begin to perish, as established in the actual game, with the two lovers following suit. The game is then deleted. Compared to the prior version, the horror is turned up way higher, with everyone suffering a terrible fate. Sayori reverts to a hopeless state, only to then mimic her happy thoughts form nearing the end of her song, Stagnant. Yuri regains the claustrophobic feeling of being up close to the player, while her song plays only to bleed out and fall when it finishes, Markov. Natsuki suffers the most, as her features are wiped from her face completely, only for her eyes to burst from her sockets before dashing her boyfriend, with her movements being erratic now, home. Both boyfriend and girlfriend get punished throughout the songs, whether being forced to suffer the same pain or being killed outright in the background. All of this feels both new, but also like they didn't waste what they could from the source material itself, as the deaths are inspired from it, and also lead up to the final moments in a climactic way. It gets better when it is mostly skill and not a gimmick that is limiting you also. You need to keep up before dying first, with this tension carrying over to Monika's cutscenes. She scrambles to fix everything, making the fear of, this being permanently real. When combining together both mods, it makes for an enjoyable experience that was expertly directed to give us characters that represent their game counterparts without needing to play the whole thing first. Whether this is demonstrated through movement, music, or vocals, they always seem to hit the nail on the head to make it mix into something overall rather memorable for those after finishing. Just so I'm not completely biased though, I will give a bit of feedback I picked up while doing my analysis. When going over Doki Doki Takeover, it was clear that there could have been more elements of horror to show what was lingering in the background whilst Monika was away, but it could be argued that the release of the bad ending fixed up a bit. With the bad ending itself, I feel like brief moments of desperation between boyfriend and the characters could be shared to further ingrain the fact that this is all hopeless, so that things are all crashing down around them. As a start, it should be noted that the X Event mod is also an adaptation similar to Doki Doki Takeover, but on a far smaller scale, done for the Underverse or X-Tale series, made by Jail Penaloza. Hopefully I've got that right. Similarly, there are aspects that can be overlapped from both series, such as characters being aware of codes, glitches, and to some of them acting as puppet masters. Monica would be compared to X-Gaster in this context, but not much is done on the X event and in comparison to Doki Doki Takeover in this regard. There isn't even a reason as to why BF is here either, since he does a callback to how all Undertale AU start with him falling down from somewhere. No backstory, nothing. Getting things properly started, there is only 1 week, totaling to about 3 songs, which on its own isn't bad, but the songs themselves aren't original. They're adapted songs from Nyx's channel, who's the creator. The music is alright on its own from the channel. When the paired vocals of Boyfriend and his opponent are put in, it brings the original track down by a couple margins. X-Kara is the most acceptable, since their vocals are the same as when the dialogue in Undertale scrolls across the text box. More than anything is soft on the ears. Ink Sans is by far the worst though, as his voice fluctuates throughout and just straight up cuts out at sections during his song, which when he is taking Sans' voice from Undertale it becomes problematic. Inking Mistake is a decent melody, but this is just bad now. Not much to say about X-Gaster's song, since it falls in the realms of meh, since it doesn't jump out at me for being good or bad, but leans towards Ink in the fact that his vocals are just ripped from Undertale's Hidden Gaster entry. It doesn't quite fit. Moving on to the artwork, it seems to fluctuate again, similar to the music, though I want to start with some optional pieces that were added on first that tie into the art. This being the overworld section, which adds a unique twist onto the usual main menu screen, allowing for people to move around to different stations to adjust settings or access free play. When we do start, the art mimics the music. X-Kara is very much expressive in their movements, following the tradition of having a goopy mouth that all Karas seem to mimic, but otherwise I have no issues with them. Ink is most certainly one of the most boring looking characters to come from a popular mod. He barely moves when fighting against, which I'm aware is due to him being a husk from his vials, but was there nothing to change? He starts Underverse being all cheerful, so maybe have him start being happy. He can become soulless near the end of the song, so there is at least some reason to him standing still. Between that battle and X-Gaster, we get thrown into a scene that is pointless besides building anticipation for the last character, and even then it's done like I'm about to fight a boss from Kirby instead, since it is all done on a small scale. X-Gaster's sprites aren't far from being like Ink's. There is certainly more movement from the glitching body, mouth, he moves his arms about a bit too. The redeeming part is the backgrounds during Ink's music, which is a lovely shot, despite being covered by side characters who don't need to be there. Apparently Nyx didn't get the notice he could leave girlfriend at the door. I'm not trying to bully Jail here, but when the free reigns are dropped, they seem to play it safe more than anything, which is summed up with the character icons which aren't stylized, just looking like they got ripped from the sprite themselves. That being a little inaccurate since Ink is smiling. Now, unlike with Doki Doki Takeover, I didn't have to bring up controversies surrounding the mod, since they kept well with the community as far as I'm aware. However, Nyx was lacking the common sense not to attack the game and people he was benefiting from as he bit the hand feeding him. To sum things up, Nyx went after Ninja Muffin, someone helping to make Friday Night Funkin', for his past, with insults like Nazi and racist being used before going on to insult Newsground as a whole by calling it degenerative. Then if that wasn't bad enough, he picked a fight with the entire FNF community by calling them apologists. When Ninja Muffin retorted, he made it clear that Nyx was profiting off of the game he was bashing and had made many videos and streams at the time for his channel. This led to him being ostracized by those such as K-Dev and The Masked Chris. Rumours spreading that he had used the X-Event mod to gain clout before then being labelled as a parasite for his actions. Eventually, it came down to Jail to actually ask people to stop harassing Nyx, since he didn't have the dignity to apologise for clearly being in the wrong. Overall, it's safe to say that Nyx is a leeching pussy with no backbone that will try to manipulate words to come off better. And in this section, it is clear to see that the music was never meant to be baked into a mod. Instead, it should have been properly built up from the ground with customized voices that can be accessed outside of the songs themselves, since they aren't separated. It probably would have been wiser to focus in on one character instead of jamming as many as possible into one mod, since no one gets to develop past a funny one-liner. X-Kara would have filled this role perfectly, since they had fully expressive movements already and were the first to be made, but I can see why X-Gaster was added since he runs the show. Ink should never have been added in the first place due to his lack of everything from proper vocals to decent animation, but then threw him deeper down by having him spam notes like a waterfall of shit. From my perspective, it is hard to see why the mod got so hyped up in the first place, since the music is better listened to on the creator's channel, but even then, the guy's a jackass to the people he is trying to appeal to. Perhaps it was the YouTubers playing it, the professionals behind the mod, or just the nostalgia some may feel about it that gave the project such a high bar. That has been my thoughts on the best and worst Friday Night Funkin' mods that have appeared online, and hopefully I've addressed why they both deserve to be ranked as such. They both are immensely popular thanks to their own reasons. However, it feels like points are given undeservingly in some cases just due to how things are carried out. Being so popular, yet being only as deep as a puddle, it makes me question who's playing the X Event mod outside of YouTubers, since it is apparently one of the most downloaded mods on Game Banana. Besides the similar connections in some parts, it is hard to compare them both due to the scale and quality one holds over the other, and Doki Doki Takeover should be a key example of how to properly adapt something into another source of media, since it leaves few stones unturned, while X Event will make no sense in a linear manner until the player is confused. It should be noted that those mentioned in this video aren't to be harassed or mobbed, even if they are arseholes, but should be critiqued fairly given the opportunity so that the product is given the best chance of succeeding against others. If you have enjoyed this video, why don't you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. But in any case, I've been VSM, and I'll see you next time. Hopefully.